Let's dig into metal gear and music from the past to bring it forward into metal present. Metal Bass Monday. So, the updates later on this week. Be sure you have subscribed, liked, hit that bell. A lot of the newer content I've been working on is going to start rolling out. The first one being the largest lesson I've ever done. Last count, there were 13 individual techniques, just variances of composition that are going to go into this lesson. It's definitely my most expansive one. We're going to cover everything from swing feel to harmonics to speed techniques to double stops, odd time over standard time, just all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be a real cool one, and it's going to have something for 4, 5, and 6 string bass. I'm going to be playing it on a 6, but I'm going to show how you adapt things like that to 4 and 5. And yeah, it's going to be a good one. So I'll be really interested to see everybody's reaction and how that goes over. And for my patrons, you guys are going to get a lot of extras with this one because you're going to get an expanded view of it with a whole section on how I composed it, all the ideas that go into it, how to break it down to its base level, how to compose it for yourself, and most importantly, how to add shred into your grooves instead of having to make grooves simplistic and then just have shred parts. Make your bass line the solo, and you don't need to solo, right? So that's going to be a cool one. That one's coming up this week. And if you want to get all that extra content, which they're going to get, including a full transcription, multi-speed drum tracks that are going to go with it, my patron things are below. Always appreciate supporting the channel and the sign-ups. Patreon and Subscribe Star. There's links for those down below. And get yourself a little extra and a much larger version of the lesson. I hope you dig that. So, speaking of the patrons, a big thanks this week to Gio Garcia. Welcome aboard, brother. Appreciate it. Rob T, Bottom Dweller 5, D-Rock, Makathu, Icky, Ryan Huggard, Chris Chen, Carol Zemesinski, Marcus Orth, Power Surge 5000, Chris at Deathless, and Steven Becker. Always appreciate the support to all of you. I hope you guys enjoy the new stuff coming up too, and thanks as always. So with that, let's get into the countdown list. Now, these aren't in a particular order. There isn't a number 1 or number 5, that kind of thing. But I picked 5 bands that I thought were, one, kind of lost in the sands of metal time, and more because they did things well ahead of styles and artists that are out now who we see kind of tend to think invented new styles, but the stuff's been around for a while. And in some cases, these guys not only did it way earlier, but my views on some of them, they did it better. So let's check it out. So I hear what you're saying to me, and you're saying, Rodney, I play prog agenta tech death, and I play the most complicated metal ever born. I play stuff so hard that no human has ever touched it. I would say nay, nay. In fact, I would say that somebody was ahead of you, and I have one word for you, and that word is Watchtower. In 1989, back when they were still using Conestoga wagons and 4 mules to cart their gear to the studio, Watchtower put out an album called Control and Resistance. Anything from Watchtower is amazing, but check this album out. This has the most complicated stuff I think that's possibly ever been put to record in the metal genre. And these are live performances. There's no cut to grid, no sped up stuff. You can hear these are just maniacs going crazy. And it is some of the most wrist-breaking stuff I've ever heard in my life. From a bass perspective, if you can master any of the songs off this album, my hat is off to you. I mean, this stuff is infuriatingly difficult. Odd time signature, high-speed riffs, altered scales, just incredible stuff. Really amazing and really impressive, and they would put most of the bands I can think of today to shame still. And again, 1989. Unbelievable. So check that out. These guys were really the forerunners of it, and to me, they're still wearing the crown. Just really amazing technical performances. And they really had the hyper-technical odd time thing down before most others. Number 2. Again, I hear you say, but Rodney, man, you're mouthy this episode. But Rodney, I add all these ambient guitars and jazzy dissonant ideas into my prog, and that's what makes me new and different. And again, I have to say, nay, nay. There's now 2 words for you, and those 2 words are fate's warning. These guys did the fusion-infused type of metal with ambient-sounding guitar pieces, odd jazz-like harmonies, odd time. They were kind of a dark, moody Dream Theater before Dream Theater was Dream Theater, and still even more complicated than that as far as their harmonic content. Maybe not as over-the-top technicality-wise, but really, really pushing the boundaries on harmonies and things. And there's some fantastic bass content. You can hear songs like the song Parallels, where the bass is really carrying the song, and really amazing work in it. But, you know, kind of my favorite started from like No Exit to Perfect Symmetry to Parallels. That whole era was just phenomenal. And, you know, these guys seem to have been kind of left behind by a lot of audiences in the whole prog thing. And I think they were one of the best at it and still are. There's a song they released a couple years ago, much more recent piece, called From the Rooftops, and I guarantee you it's a song Tool wished they had done. So check that song out too. Check out some Fate's Warning if you're at all into this modern prog and gent and that kind of thing, and see really where this stuff comes from, and in my opinion, what some of the better versions of it still are. Now, how many times have you sat around and thought, I kind of want to hear some ZZ Top and some Molly Hatchet, but also early Pantera? Haven't we all? Of course you have. And that's why you need to hear Corrosion of Conformity. These guys did the part doom, part southern grind, bluesy, swingy, grunge metal type of thing way early on, way ahead of a lot of the people who were doing kind of the revival of that style. And some of what we've come to love about the slower or dirtier Pantera tunes, Corrosion of Conformity, way ahead of the game. You want to hear some stuff that's got that southern rock kind of thing going on, a little bit of Molly, a little bit of ZZ Top, Albatross, right there. If you listen to that and you go, this is all great too, but I also want a little bit of later Judas Priest or even some Metallica, then Mine Are the Eyes of God, just a ton of stuff off of Blind, off of Wise Blood, off, you know, any of those albums, Deliverance. They're all going to deliver that bluesier, grimier kind of sound mixed in with southern rock and newer metal. Really great stuff from these guys. And again, they really seem to peak for a little bit and were in kind of the public consciousness. Vote with a Bullet had a good video for it. Albatross had a video. And then it just seems like they kind of rose, hit a peak, and went back out. But really underserved, and we need to go back, and if you're into the bluesier, grimier kind of metal, you got to check these guys out. Again, forefathers way ahead of the game. Now, speaking of some of the southern and kind of the more doom stuff, I've noticed a lot of the new wave of metal bands, some of the younger guys that are bringing up the thrash influences and, you know, stuff from the mid-'80s, early 90s, that type of stuff. Doom has become a big thing again. And I don't think anybody's ever going to do it again as good as the band Trouble. They're self-titled. Just get it. Just get it. If you like that, we just discovered Black Sabbath and we're obsessed with it kind of thing, these guys were amazing at it. Just, again, like a modern Black Sabbath. And they have, you know, the same kind of squawky lead vocalist, but they have twin guitar harmonies, just driving good, original bluesier, hard rock going into metal style stuff. And again, you know, a lot of these doom revival bands that I hear going on, I hear distinct pulls from Trouble. So check them out. I think they're over with, gone, but definitely should not be forgotten. And then last on our list, 24/7 Spyz. Got to check these out. These guys were an all-black metal crossover band, kind of in the era when funk was having a big effect on metal. But you had bands like Faith No More and then Chili Peppers. And, when that kind of style was breaking through, there were a bunch of bands, kind of doing it. But if you want to hear basically a harder Living Colour, 24/7 Spyz. John Connolly's Theory, New Superhero Worship, and just great blends of R&B, funk, a little bit of jazzy stuff, but heavier versions of metal than like what Living Colour did. Again, if you want to do like New Superhero versus Cult of Personality from Living Colour, right in that same vein. But 24/7 Spyz, a little grimier, a little less polished, a little more ugly, and definitely their riffs were a little bit on the meaner side. So they really got kind of lost in that mix and were a little underappreciated. Not really sure what happened there, but cult legends, you need to check them out. So I really recommend Gumbo Millennium. Great album. It's up on YouTube. So that leads the end of the list, but all of these bands originated styles that are pulled from, I think, not only when they were around, but have been pulled from ever since, or have advanced styles that we think are new, but we're doing them, these guys were doing them way back in the day. And some versions of it, I think, are better than the renewed version that we have now. So that's going to be the top 5. Check them out. Let me know what you think of all these bands. Have you already experienced them? Have you seen them live even? And if not, and if they're new to you, what do you think when you first hear them? What are your thoughts, and how do you think they compare? Hit me up in the comments below. Now let's get to some gear. So a lot of the gear on this list is stuff that I think is really, really well manufactured gems that you can get inexpensively, that for one reason or another got kind of lost in the sands of time again and were passed over, but are better quality a lot of times than I think some of their modern counterparts. And especially since we're all on a budget of some kind, if you can go back and find a gold mine at a pawn store, used shop, or on a classifieds and get one of these basses and just be killing it with a bass that would cost you a few $1,000s now, but in that quality, pick them up for a couple $100. Let's check out what ones you can get for that and see if we can find some steals. And watch, of course, all these will start going up in price as soon as we talk about it, right? Seems to happen every time. So let's go down the list. Most of the items on this list came out in the region between the late 80s into the 90s and through the 2000s, early 2000s. Basically anything from that region out of Peavey was pretty astounding. They had a really, really good quality control and build standard. Some of my favorite basses from that era are definitely the TL series. Neck-through basses, they were built to an incredible standard. They played phenomenal. They sounded good. Great neck on them. High-quality components. The TL5, the TL6 were great. Even the Rudy Sarzo signature they had back then. You have the Cirrus, which I think is still being made, but you have older versions of that. You have the Foundation basses. The T40. You have just basically almost anything from that era is amazing. Like the grind bass. What I think happened with a lot of this is that Peavey jumped on the bandwagon that was set from basses like Tobias and things like that. And as grunge came into the 90s and everything became kind of lo-fi in the bass department, everybody kind of defaulted to the old instruments. You either had a Fender Jazz or a Fender Precision or an old Gibson. Everybody wanted the older rundown guitars. And Peavey was putting out, and some of the other people on the list were putting out basses that were a bit more high-end and refined, and these bands just didn't want to be, carrying that look. So they got kind of lost and under the radar. None of those basses goes over a few $100, and they're all phenomenal finds. If you see one, pick it up and try it out for yourself. Absolute gold mines, and I keep a couple myself, and I'm actually looking to maybe get another TL6 here soon, so we'll see how it goes. But any of those Peavey series, absolutely going to kill it. Next up, again, from that same era, Carvin. Carvin kind of suffered from the same thing that Peavey did, is that they put out really good stuff, but they were American made and for some reason considered second tier. Also, a lot of their stuff seemed to get picked up by kind of a metal audience or something, and they just didn't get the credit they deserved. Almost everything they made in that era was neck through the body. The pickups are okay. A lot of them are good. Some of them were just okay. But the quality control, again, neck through the body, some of it has exotic woods on it. Some of the basses had Kaler bass trims stock from the factory with them. Really, really good playing basses, necks that aren't too slim, aren't too thick, and really feel like they're substantial and have a great weight to them. You can pick these up all over the place for next to nothing. I would put these basses up against and above most of what's coming out right now in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, and sometimes you can pick these things up for around $400. Definitely left behinds, and something you can go back to and get yourself a deal on. Don't look down on them, don't overlook them. If you manage to see one, pick it up, try it out. Next up is Aria Pro. There is still a collector's market for the series we're most familiar with, the SBs. They got kind of popular with metal because of Cliff Burton and his signature model. And it's always had an audience. A lot of the great players of the 80s used an SB, and you had guys like the dude from Duran Duran and stuff like that. He had a great style and got a good sound out of him. But there was one of their series that got overlooked that I think deserves a second look. And that was the Integrea. It was a really interesting kind of almost a mutated Spectre vibe to it, in that they had a PJ setup going on, kind of a concave body. And early on, if you want to hear him, Billy Gould from Faith No More, who I know a lot of guys love his sound, he was using that series, the Integrea, and through cheaper Peavey amps. Not cheap in, what their quality is, but cheap as in what you could buy them for and what you can especially buy them for now. He played all this stuff early on. He was an Aria Pro Peavey guy. Great stuff. You can still find these things, again, $200 on eBay all day long. Really overlooked basses. I played one before and threw some EMGs into the P&J setup, and it was Eddie Jackson Mind Crime tone all day long. Really good stuff. Cheap, quality construction, good parts. Definitely overlooked. Grab one if you can find it. In kind of a funny inversion of things, the original G&Ls, the L1000 series, things like that, I think that there's always been a little bit of a lack of crossover for G&L into the metal audience, and I think it's just been because they tend to have a more classic vibe to them. They have the very original Fender thing, and when they came out in the era where metal was looking for really kind of wild-looking instruments, things like that, nobody wanted the more traditional-looking stuff. For some reason, they didn't make it into grunge too, though, so they got trapped into kind of a no man's land there. But their pickups are aggressive, and I mean hot. Really, really punishing sound out of them. In fact, if you look up on YouTube, you can see Flotsam and Jetsam in the early days doing Hammerhead, or the intro to it, with Jason Newsted playing a G&L, and he is absolutely raging. His sound is just ripping and aggressive and snarling, and the older G&Ls you can get for a song. I mean, the newer ones go for a good bit, and the newer ones are great too. But the classic G&L, the older ones that have been around the block and are used, they have kind of a collector's market, but it's not huge, and you can still get a steal on them. Great basses and really, really underrated pickups. Those things, seriously, some of the meanest I've ever heard. Probably the meanest passive pickups I've ever heard. Just vicious. I would say they're in the same vein as like the Schecter Apocalypse pickups, and I would put them in the same vein as something like an EMG or something. Not as hi-fi, but definitely lots of grunt, lots of snarl. Like I said, check out that clip, and you'll definitely hear what I'm talking about. But another great deal. And finally, even though these models are still made, they're a little different than they used to be, and in my opinion, the quality isn't quite there. But again, we're going for the past gold mines and the cheap gear that's world class. The original Yamaha BB series. This series was played by Michael Anthony. You can see him a ton in the early videos and stuff playing the BB series, had a P&J setup in it, and it was Billy Sheehan's first Yamaha. When he first came on with them, he had a pink one that he used for a while, and these were amazing basses. If you want that simple, precision, big body, meat and potatoes bass, but with a really good sound, to me, they were like a Fender Precision I wanted to play. I wasn't always a fan of the Fender Precisions, but these had a much nicer neck. The appointments on it and the hardware were great, and the PJ pickups that they had in it really had a cut and a sparkle to them that I just found that the Fenders didn't have. I would put them up against any style of PJ going right now, and you can get them pretty cheap. They're good stuff, and they're really road workhorse basses. These are the ones that you drag around in the van and they fall out and go off the end of a stage and get kicked by your guitar player. They're built like tanks, and that's what I really liked about them. Just really thunderous kind of things, and just really what you want out of a road bass is, cut, clarity, reliability, built like a tank, and really individual and kind of cool looking for the more standard style of, a Precision with a jazz in it. So again, just like with all the others, if you see one somewhere and it's one of the originals and it's a good price on it, make sure you try it out. It may be the bass that's for you, and you get to bring the past up front. So check that out. And if any of these basses on the list you already own, let me know when you got yours, how you got it, and has it stood the test of time for you? Do you think I'm off base with any of the recommendations or had a bad experience with any of these? Almost everybody I know that has these basses that I'm recommending love them, and they treasure them, and they hide them away places to keep them in good shape. But I'd love to hear your reactions. Hit me up in the comments. I'll see you down there. So that's going to do it for this week's Metal Bass Monday. A trip back in time to bring into metal present, save ourselves some money, get some new influences, and find out what the metal forefathers still have in store for us that we can borrow from, and people won't know where you got it because they have attention span of a ferret after a double espresso. So check out the songs. Let me know what you think. Hit me up with your thoughts and opinions on them. Check out the gear, or let me know if you have any of that. I'll see you down there in the comments. I will see you later this week with that gear demo / lesson. And for the patrons, I will see you on the channel with the expanded lesson. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys putting up some videos of getting through this one. It's going to be a beast. So I'll see you on the next one. Wait, don't go. You never know. Moments like this are crucial. The next video you watch could change your life. And it might be this one, or even this one. Are you willing to take that chance? I don't know. Check them out.